registering guns or the lack thereof. In the state of Louisiana, there is no registration of firearms. There's several different ways you can legally come into possession of a firearm, and none of them require a registration process. A lot of people, when you buy a gun from a firearms dealer or academy or someplace where you have to fill out paperwork, that federal form, that yellow paper, is called a 4473. Technically, it's not a registration. Some people seem to kind of think it is, kind of a conspiracy theory type thing. Um, Dealers are required to keep them on hand for many years. So in a way, it is kind of a de facto registration, but it's not technically a registration. Point being is that when you're pulled over or you somehow encounter law enforcement, if you're presented with the question of, well, is your gun registered or where's your gun registration or something like that, you need to be educated to know that simply does not exist in this state. Particularly, there's been a history in the New Orleans area of police officers asking for firearms receipts or proof of ownership. Again, there is no legal requirement for that. To make an analogy, do you have to carry around a receipt for your cell phone or your car stereo or your shoes? No, it's the gun is just a piece of property. We do not have firearm licenses in Louisiana like other states do. So there is no registration, there is no proof of that. That being said, this is where we get back into the reality of the law. While you should not have to, and you legally do not, our goal is to make our life easier. So I have my vehicle registration, I have my vehicle insurance. If I live in New Orleans and I carry the same gun most of the time for concealed carry, is it really too much to make a copy of it, of your receipt, if you have a receipt, or a bill of sale, or any documentation that you may have, and keep it in your vehicle? You shouldn't have to do that. It's ridiculous, but is it going to pave the road a little smoother for you? Possibly. Understand, though, that at the end of the day, if you find yourself having your gun seized or taken illegally, then you need to pursue that as a legal matter. The only way that law enforcement can really take your firearm is if it's stolen, and then it'll be taken as evidence. Other than that, there's really no circumstances that they can take your gun legally. So, again, know that. Kind of keep that in reserve if you need it. If the officer asks you for any type of documentation, say, "Well, sir, that I don't have that. That's not required." It seems to be something that's specific to New Orleans. It's not as prevalent as it used to be, but it does. I do occasionally hear stories of it happen. So know that it's wrong. Have the intestinal fortitude to follow it through and get your property back, which will hopefully, one, get your property back, and two, educate those officers. Because granted, there are a handful of bad cops out there all across the country. All right, so there's nothing we can really do about those guys other than find them and get rid of them. Most of the times when cops make mistakes like that, it is truly and honestly just due to a lack of training, just a lack of knowledge and ignorance of that fact. And really, can you blame them? When you look at an attorney has an entire room library and multiple clerks and aides at his disposal to practice one specific scope of the law. A cop is expected to know the entire criminal code immediately, how to apply it and all that in the street, in the midst of whatever's going on at that scene. So, yes, because most of us, guns are near and dear to our heart, we feel like everyone should know that information. But they don't. Cops are generalists. They know a lot about general things of the law. And then some cops have specialties. So some cops are specialists when it comes to narcotics, or to child abuse, or to sexual crimes, or to traffic, or to guns. When I was in law enforcement, obviously I have a very strong personal interest in firearms, so I knew a lot of firearm laws front and back because it was interesting to me. I couldn't tell you too much about drugs. I can make regular drug arrests, but when it gets into really finite, big type drug things, I call those guys who knew more than me. Same thing with traffic. I can work a traffic accident, but if it was a 15-car pileup with a helicopter and a submarine, well, I'm calling the traffic guys in because they know how to get into all those specifics. So cut the guys a little bit of slack, but at the same time, don't let yourself get run over.